Did the two-time defending champions really underestimate a team missing its brightest star? Or did the Indiana Fever just expose a dynasty's cracks? That's the question echoing across basketball circles today. After a game that felt less like an upset and more like a public unmasking, with Caitlin Clark and 5 other key contributors out, Indiana arrived at Gainbridge Fieldhouse looking like cannon fodder for Las Vegas. Instead, the Fever tore up the script. They didn't just steal a win, they turned the postseason hierarchy upside down and forced a winner-take-all Game 5 with a finals berth at stake. This wasn't a fluky hot shooting night or a lucky whistle. From the opening tip, Indiana clawed for every rebound, dived for every loose ball, and disrupted every bit of the Aces' rhythm. Analysts who'd laughed off the series as a mismatch were suddenly scrambling to explain how a 6th seed missing half its roster had just bullied the league's glamour franchise into desperation mode. And the message was clear. The Fever aren't here to survive, they're here to rewrite history. What happens when the least likely player on the court becomes the heartbeat of a team's uprising? Lexie Hull answered that question with a performance that mixed grit, defiance, and a pointed rebuke of A'ja Wilson's post-game narrative. Battling a sore back that would have sidelined most players, Hull refused to fade into the background. She threw herself into passing lanes for 4 steals, grabbed 7 bruising rebounds, and dove onto the hardwood like every possession was life or death. But it wasn't just the box score that made her stand out, it was the tone she set. Hull's relentless effort rattled Las Vegas's perimeter stars and forced them into mistakes they're not used to making. And when the game ended and Wilson launched into complaints about officiating and special whistles, Hull didn't shy away. She publicly shifted the spotlight onto Aliyah Boston's hard work and dismissed the tantrum for what it was, an excuse. In one night, she transformed from a role player into a symbol of Indiana's refusal to be bullied. Hull's body language and her words told the same story. If the Fever were going down, they'd go down swinging. Instead, they walked out of Gainbridge as victors and sent a not-so-subtle message that Wilson's intimidation tactics had finally met their match. Aliyah Boston, Indiana's 22-year-old cornerstone, turned the WNBA's reigning MVP into a grinder instead of a finisher, forcing her into contested shot after contested shot, while punishing Las Vegas at the other end. Boston didn't just defend. She dominated. She sealed deep position, attacked the rim with purpose, and drew 13 free throws through sheer physicality. Each trip to the line felt like a tiny crack in the Aces' aura of invincibility. By the end of the night, she'd compiled 24 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 assists, a stat line that would be impressive for any veteran, let alone a second-year center carrying an injury-ravaged roster. But the numbers only hint at the impact. Boston's screens freed Kelsey Mitchell. Her rotations erased driving lanes. Her calm after each whistle kept Indiana from unraveling. Even as Wilson tried to bait calls and escalate contact, Boston stayed composed. The eye of a storm her team had waited a decade to find. In a league built on stars, this was a night where the youngest star on the court not only outplayed the MVP, but also exposed how reliant the Aces have become on preferential whistles and perimeter accompaniment. Boston made every inch of the game feel like hard labor, and in doing so, she redefined the series on her own terms. Game 4 felt like the ladder for Kelsey Mitchell, the Fever's longtime scoring guard who's been quietly carrying the franchise through years of obscurity. Against the Aces in a building that had already written off Indiana, she didn't just score, she seized the stage. 25 points poured in from every angle, mid-range pull-ups, off-the-dribble threes, fearless drives into double teams. Each bucket chipped away at Vegas's confidence until the chance began, filling Gainbridge Fieldhouse like a rallying cry for a player who'd been overlooked her entire career. Mitchell wasn't just cashing in shots, she was cashing in years of hard work, loyalty, and perseverance for a franchise that has been rebuilding since Tamika Catchings retired. In the fourth quarter, with the Aces threatening to rally, Mitchell stepped to the line and buried free throws with the poise of a seasoned closer, silencing any hope of a comeback. This was her statement game, that you don't have to be on a super team or have a national marketing machine behind you to command respect. For a team missing Caitlin Clark and 5 other contributors, Mitchell's offensive leadership turned desperation into belief. And for the Aces, watching a player they'd once dismissed rise to the moment was another crack in their facade of invulnerability. This wasn't just scoring, it was vindication, delivered one jumper at a time. 2 nights earlier, Odyssey Sims had been the quiet scapegoat of Indiana's loss, 0 for 7 from the field, a minus on both ends, and a target of critics who wondered why she was still in the rotation. In Game 4, she walked back into the fire and rewrote the narrative in real time. The box score says 18 points on 6 of 9 shooting with a dagger 3, but that undersells what happened. Sims' drives cracked open the Aces' defense like an axe to a frozen door. Every time she turned the corner, Vegas was forced into late rotations that left Kelsey Mitchell and Aliyah Boston with clean looks or mismatches. She didn't just score, she created chaos where Indiana could thrive. Even more telling was her mindset. Leave that game where it is. Focus on today, she said afterward, describing how she wiped the slate clean. That mental reset became contagious. You could see it in how Indiana attacked early, how they kept their foot on the gas instead of retreating. In a playoff series where the Aces had been used to dictating the pace, Sims flipped the script by attacking their backcourt head-on and making them uncomfortable. It was the textbook definition of a bounce-back performance, a veteran refusing to accept the role of scapegoat and instead becoming the spark plug that turned a desperate roster into an unpredictable, attacking fort. For a team built on resilience, Sims's redemption was the living embodiment of "we over me." In a game dominated by big headlines and bigger personalities, Shea Petty's fingerprints were all over Indiana's stability, even if the box score didn't scream her name. She finished with a modest 7 points, 2 steals and a handful of assists, but those numbers barely hint at her real impact. Every time Las Vegas tried to rattle the Fever with a quick run, it was Petty who slowed the tempo, called out the set, and calmed the floor. Her poise let the younger players breathe. She read the defense like a veteran quarterback, slipping into open pockets of space for timely jumpers, throwing early passes before traps arrived, and even intercepting Aces' outlet attempts to steal back momentum. When the crowd was at its loudest and emotions threatened to spike after a whistle, she would gather her teammates in a quick huddle and reset the collective heartbeat. Those moments rarely make highlight reels, but they win playoff games because they prevent a team from imploding under pressure. For a roster held together by hardship contracts and second chances, Petty was the glue, the grown-up in the room, who gave Indiana the composure to keep executing their plan when Vegas tried to speed them up or bait them into mistakes. In a series defined by grit, her veteran calm was the invisible anchor that allowed Boston to dominate, Mitchell to close, Hull to dive, and Sims to attack without the fear of chaos swallowing them whole. For 2 years, the Las Vegas Aces have worn the crown of invincibility, strutting into arenas with rings on their fingers and swagger in their walk. Game 4 showed what happens when that confidence turns brittle under heat. Every loose ball Indiana chased, every contested rebound, Aliyah Boston ripped down, chipped away at Vegas's composure. By the second half, you could see it in the body language. Arms thrown up after whistles, eyes darting to referees instead of to assignments, players jawing at each other instead of locking in. The boiling point came with coach Becky Hammond herself. Frustrated by a series of calls and her team's unraveling execution, she signaled for a timeout she didn't have, a mental lapse you'd expect from a rookie coach, not a seasoned champion. The whistle blew, the technical was assessed, and Gainbridge Fieldhouse erupted. Indiana got an extra point plus possession at crunch time, and the Aces bench sat stunned as if their entire comfort zone had been yanked out from under them. In that moment, the power dynamic flipped. Las Vegas wasn't the aggressor anymore. They were the team under pressure, trying to hold on while a short-handed 6th seed pushed them to the brink. Hammond's blunder became the perfect snapshot of a night where the defending champs lost their grip, not because of some conspiracy, but because Indiana's relentless energy forced them into mistakes they simply aren't used to making. For 3 straight games, the Aces had feasted on soft calls that padded free throw numbers and allowed Aja Wilson to rack up points without breaking a sweat. Then Game 4 happened, and suddenly the narrative flipped. Indiana stopped settling for jumpers, funneled everything through the lane, and attacked the rim with a purpose that referees couldn't ignore. The result? 34 trips to the line for the Fever compared to just 11 for Los. Instantly, Wilson and Becky Hammond cried foul, accusing the officials of changing the tone of the series, and even joking about Boston's special whistle. But dig deeper and the hypocrisy jumps out. Through the first 3 games, it was Indiana who had been hit with ticky-tack calls while fighting for position, while Vegas floated on the perimeter collecting freebies. The foul totals across the series were nearly identical, which proves there was no sudden conspiracy, only a shift in strategy. Boston fought deeper seals, Mitchell and Sims drove hard off screens. Guards forced defenders into contact at the rim over and over. That's how you earn whistle. Meanwhile, Vegas relied on mid-range looks and pull-ups. If you don't attack the basket, you don't get calls. Simple math. Game 4's officiating wasn't a gift. It was a mirror showing who had the courage to live in the paint, and who wanted shortcuts. The Aces didn't lose because refs betrayed them. They lost because Indiana stopped playing timid and made them defend every inch of the floor. It's not just a slogan on a t-shirt, it's the blueprint of how a sixth seed missing half its roster has now outworked the league's glamour team 3 times in elimination games. Game 4 wasn't one hero dragging a team, it was a coordinated assault, built on shared sacrifice. Aliyah Boston anchored the paint, Kelsey Mitchell closed like a veteran assassin, Lexie Hull dove for every loose ball despite a screaming back, Odyssey Sims crashed through the defense in redemption mode, and Shea Petty slowed the storm with her veteran calm. Each role fed the other until the whole became something more dangerous than any one superstar, a unit that thrives on pressure and disbelief. That's why they've won every elimination game they've faced this postseason. When critics said they're done after Game 3, the Fever looked like a team just getting started. This identity isn't built on marketing hype or special treatment from refs. It's built on collective urgency, discipline, and an unshakable belief that every player in the room matters. It's the same ethos that allowed Boston to stare down the MVP without flinching, and Mitchell to step into MVP chants without ego. We Over Me has turned doubt into fuel, adversity into edge, and now has Indiana one win from rewriting its franchise history. 10 years ago, the Indiana Fever were a fading name in the WNBA playoff picture, still living off the echoes of the Tamika Catchings era. Now, after years of rebuilding, losing seasons, and being written off as a small market footnote, they are one win away from their first finals berth in a decade, and they've done it without Caitlin Clark and 5 other key contributors. Tuesday night in Las Vegas won't just be a Game 5, it will be a referendum on everything this team has built. Gainbridge Fieldhouse saw them tear down the Aces' aura brick by brick in Game 4, but Michelob Ultra Arena will be a cauldron, tight quarters, deafening fans, a defending champion desperate to protect its turf. A'ja Wilson will come out swinging, Becky Hammond will feed her the ball and try to bait Indiana's front court into early foul trouble. Yet Indiana's formula is already written. Aliyah Boston controlling both ends, Kelsey Mitchell as the closer, Odyssey Sims slicing up the defense, Lexie Hull pestering the perimeter and throwing her body into every 50-50 ball, and Shea Petty keeping everyone calm. This isn't the same old Fever. It's a team forged in adversity, built on We Over Me, and powered by a belief that pressure is their fuel, not their kryptonite. Whether they win or lose, this group has already shifted the balance of power in the league, proving that grit, depth, and unshakable composure can topple a dynasty's comfort zone. 40 minutes now stand between Indiana and the rebirth of its franchise.